Good evening. I'm Doug Doherty, president of Hamilton Flourishing. Welcome to the People's Debate, a debate for the people and by the people. The mission of Hamilton Flourishing is to inform, educate, and support the citizens of Chattanooga and Hamilton County in their pursuit of a more peaceful and prosperous community. This 1 hour mayoral debate is between Republicans Matt Hullander, Sabrena Smedley, and Weston Wamp. The election is May 3rd. Early voting starts April 13th. All questions are taken from 2 polls taken over the last 6 weeks. These polls and crosstabs are available on our website. Each candidate will respond to the same questions for 2 minutes, and after the last one is finished, each will have 1 minute to respond to the other candidates. Hamilton Flourishing appreciates the candidates, staffs, and especially the voters. We'll now start the debate alphabetically with 3-minute opening statements by Matt Hullander, followed by Sabrena Smedley, and then the Weston Wamp. Good evening, candidates. Mr. Hullander, we'll start with you.
Well, thank you so much, Doug, for having us here. Thanks to Hamilton Flourishing for hosting this debate, and thanks to Socially You. What a great facility here. So I'm Matt Hullander. I grew up in Hamilton County. I've lived here my entire life. 6 generations of Hullanders have lived in Hamilton County. I have an awesome wife, Jenny. We've been married for 20 years. I have a 16-year-old amazing daughter, Reese. I started work at an early age. At 12 years old, I started mowing yards, M&M Lawn Service. I even had my own business cards. Through high school, I worked at Red Food Store, bagging groceries, and worked in the produce department. And I unloaded trucks at Overnight Express. I'm a product of public school. I started at Appison Elementary School and finished at Ooltewah High School. And then I got my associate's degree at Chattanooga State. After that, I went to work for my father. We had a small window factory I worked in building windows for a few years. Then I had my own installation crew, and then I worked my way up to sales. And then in 2005, I took a leadership role as president of the company. In 2007, I took out a loan and purchased the business from my father. And then over the last 15 years, we grew that into 3 locations covering all of East Tennessee up to Kentucky. And I was fortunate to sell the business. And at that time, we were doing 5-fold from the time I bought it. I was eager to learn. I joined peer groups. I read business books. I took business classes. And that brings me here today. I really feel God is leading me to do this. I feel like it's His will for me. When I was considering this run for mayor, I asked a lot of the folks that are closest to me their opinion. And they said, Matt, you really need to give your gifts, and you love giving back to the community. If I'm fortunate enough to become mayor, I have big shoes to fill. Jim Coppinger has done a great job, and as he knows, the mayor wears many hats. This race is not about one priority or 2 priorities. It's about lots of priorities, and I know how to multitask. This role needs leadership. I know how to lead, I know how to build teams, and I know how to get things done. I'm not a politician. I've never ran or run for public office, and this is not a stepping stone for me. I have no desire to go any further. I just want to be the next mayor of Hamilton County to give back to this community that's been so good to me. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Sabrena?
Good evening. Thank you, Doug, for hosting this debate, and thank you to everyone out there that's tuning in this evening and taking an interest. I appreciate you for tuning in this evening. I'm Sabrena Smedley, running for Hamilton County Mayor, and I'd like to start off by saying faith and family are everything to me. And with that being said, I am Christian first. Then my family is second of importance in my life. I'm the proud mom of 3 children, Ryan, Ashley, and Chase Turner. I'm grandmother, better known as Gigi, to my beautiful Brindley and Jackson, my 2 beautiful grandchildren. And I'm happily married to Mark Smedley. We've been married for 10 years now. You know, things weren't always easy for me, and I've really grown in my faith. That's why I like to say I'm a Christian first and foremost, because so many times in my life I've had to depend on God. Things weren't always easy. I was a single mom raising 3 kids by myself when I started Sabrena Realty Associates, my own real estate brokerage. And God provided so many opportunities for me, and I'm just so thankful. That's why I'm here today. I started a second business, Pure Bar, which is a fitness boutique. 2 locations in East Brainerd and Manufacturers Road, and I started that business 3 months before COVID hit. So I know what it's like to be a business owner and be shut down. But by the grace of God and hard work and a great team, I was able to grow that business and to also keep all 18 of my employees. I'm so proud of that. I'm serving in my second term on the County Commission, representing the fastest growing district in Hamilton County, which is East Brainerd, Appleton, part of Collegedale, and Ottawa. It's been so rewarding to serve the people. And I first got involved in politics in a grassroots effort of fighting forced annexation. And thanks to our fight, our grassroots fight on the local level, now that fight has been taken to the state level and legislation has been passed so that we can no longer be annexed into the city. It's been rewarding to serve the people of my district, and I look forward to moving on to the executive branch of Hamilton County Mayor. And I look forward to sharing my vision for Hamilton County when it comes to education, public safety, infrastructure, and economic development, and just opportunities for Hamilton County citizens. So again, thank you for tuning in this evening and taking an interest in what's going on in your community, and I look forward to sharing my vision.
Thank you, Sabrena. Weston?
Doug, thank you. Thanks for all the hard work that went into making tonight happen. Thanks to both of you for joining me. Let's not miss the moment. This is the first time in 28 years we've had a competitive race for county mayor, and it's just an honor to be involved in the first of several conversations about not just the role of county mayor and the job of county mayor, but the future of our community. A lot of people don't realize that the job of county mayor is somewhat unique to Tennessee. Only Hawaii and Tennessee have county mayors in all the counties. And in Tennessee, the tradition is that it is a leadership job. It's vaguely defined in state law, and it's a financial position. State law refers to it as the fiscal agent of our 95 counties. You write the budget every year, and I would say by virtue of the budget in this county, 64% of it being education, a big part of being county mayor is focusing on and having a vision for public education. You know, I think my background has prepared me pretty well to serve as our next county mayor. Going back a decade ago, I had the opportunity to serve as both a founding director and a co-founder of 2 of the most important investment funds that our city has seen in recent years, investing in companies in the logistics industry that have become some of the largest employers and fastest growing companies in our community. I learned a lot of our best qualities, some of the areas we need to work on, and it was a real privilege to learn business alongside some of our community's great entrepreneurs. In recent years, I started the Millennial Debt Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit focused on long-term fiscal policy, fighting against the national debt, fighting against wasteful government spending at all levels of government, and have been honored as conservatives across the country have joined me in that effort. And then in 2019, Governor Lee appointed me to the Tennessee Board of Regents, which is the board led by 12 civilians that oversees our state's largest college system, all 40 of our community colleges and technical colleges, and it is an absolute joy to serve those colleges where so many families find their first college graduate. And I happen to serve on the Finance Committee, helping steward a $1.5 billion budget. But our resumes are only a part of our campaign story. And so for us, this campaign, for my wife and I, it really is about the dreams we have for the community that our 4 children will grow up in. That's why we're running. And we've turned those dreams into a platform, really the only one this campaign's seen so far. We call it our Hamilton First Agenda. We're going to expand it as this week goes on. And, you know, it's a picture of what we as parents want to see the community our kids grow up in to look like. A safe community, one with great schools where our values are preserved for a generation to come. And from the perspective of a county mayor, there's not a whole lot you do hands-on in public safety, but there's a tremendous role for our public school system to prepare young people for a life of work, to get ahead of and to intervene where children are headed down the wrong path, to give them a hope and a future. certainly to customize education to serve our students. Let's build more vocational schools. Let's bring parents in new, innovative ways into the classroom even. And then preserve our values, whether that's honoring the men and women who've served our country, or whether that's honoring those who serve as first responders today, or in a new way that we're going to roll out this week in a volunteer corps, asking members of communities of faith to partner with county government in ways that government can't answer all of our problems. That's why we're running, and I'm honored to be a part of tonight's conversation.
Thank you, Matt, Sabrena, Weston. Thank you for the opening remarks. Our first question is a big question, and it really goes to the root of your view of government, your philosophy of government. We've conducted several polling polls over the last several weeks of what people think are important. And one of the questions that we got fed a lot was about limited government. In fact, when we asked the question, 81.5% of Hamilton County primary voters support the concept of limited government, 81.5, which includes incursion into social issues, following their charter, and avoiding excess taxation. Do you, and we'll start with Sabrena, rotating through the alphabet, do you support or oppose limited government? Sabrena.
Doug, I'm a conservative, and therefore I support limited government. And we keep government limited by keeping things local and accountable to the people. I believe that God created all of us in His image with rights. And we live in a free country to exercise those rights. And I believe in a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And as a conservative, I want to, as mayor, to make sure that decisions locally are made local. And that's how we keep government limited and accountable to the people of Hamilton County.
Next, Sabrena Weston.
As a principle, Doug, there's no doubt that I agree with limited government. I think we all would say the same thing or some variation of the same thing. A lot of what I encounter in the work I do fighting for long-term fiscal policy so that we'll think long-term about how government works is that we've gotten away from the notion of federalism, and we think of government just as this one big amoeba. But the truth is we'd be best served to think about government doing its specific role under the Constitution well. So should it be limited? Certainly, it doesn't need to interfere with the free enterprise system in unnecessary, onerous ways. But really, I'm a believer in effective government in its role. I don't want, for example, the federal government to come up short and limit its ability to protect us. That's really probably the most important role of the federal government, is to defend the country. In that same way, I don't want our community to come up short in what may be its two, certainly probably are its two most important roles, keeping us safe and educating our children. And so I think we have to make a distinction there, because often, and I think this is just a product of the times we live in, we tune in at night to Sean Hannity or Tucker Carlson, or if you're on the other side of the aisle, you're watching MSNBC, and all issues are national. And so when we say limited government, we've grown, rightfully, so distrustful of Washington that I think we think of big government as all bad, or government's bad. You give any aspect of government money, and that's a bad thing. The reality is there are public institutions in our country that perform exceptionally well. Go walk into a Chattanooga City Fire Hall and find me a place of business that has more pride, where the people who work there take more pride in their work, in their trucks. I use the same example of our local technical college. You go to TCAT Chattanooga, and I don't think you can find a place on the planet that operates with the same efficiency as our state-run technical college. So limited government, sure. Would I love for our state-run technical college to have more students so that we prepare our future's workforce right there on the campus of Chattanooga State? You better believe it. And with a 94% job placement rate, we've demonstrated that there is potential for government to actually work well.
Thank you, Weston. Matt?
Thank you for the question, Doug. Of course, I, as a conservative, believe in smaller government and no big government. I think also being a conservative, to me, starts with my beliefs in biblical values. I think as mayor, we have to limit big government and keep it local with local businesses, but we also have to work with our state, and we have to do that to make things happen to benefit our community. So I want to keep it local. I want to know what the citizens feel. And I definitely think that smaller government is bigger or better than bigger government.
Thank you. Let's start with Weston. Could you respond for 1 minute to what the other two candidates said? If you choose to, you don't have to take a minute. You can take less.
Well, I don't know that I disagree with any of that. It's just that, my perspective is, no, I don't know that I disagree. I just feel very passionately that we ought not throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think often we've become so cynical about government that we forget that we really want government to operate at a high level in its proper lane.
Okay. Sabrena?
Yes, I would just add that this nation, was founded on conservative principles that made it great. But I would add that maybe this pandemic, if it showed us anything, I mean, when you as a small business owner can't go to work and can't tell your employees to show up for work, I think if this pandemic has showed us anything, it has showed us how precious our civil liberties are as human beings. And how important it is who governs.
Matt?
I think we're all in agreement here, Doug.
All right. Well, thank you. We'll move on to question 2. This one is, Weston, you will go first on this question. Yeah, I'm right. We want to talk about crime and public safety. It's one of the most important issues to Hamilton County Republican primary voters. Of that group, 58% say gang shootings are having a moderate or significant impact. What will you do about gang violence and shootings in Hamilton County?
You'll hear me often on the campaign trail talk about a number that, when you really consider its impact to the culture of our community, is pretty startling. 60% of the graduates of our public high schools by the state standard aren't ready to go to work, and they're not ready to go to college. And just about every last gang member in the city of Chattanooga was once upon a time a lonely young man with no hope or a future. And the one-size-fits-all model in our public education system, which is really where the mayor has great leverage, right? And we can come back to that in a second, because we have an elected sheriff, and I certainly will partner with our city mayor, who does have a hands-on role in combating violent crime as it's happening. But over the long term, if we're ever going to get ahead, we've got to go and intervene in middle school, where so often in our inner city communities, young men come up hopeless. They haven't had great examples in their lives. We need to invest in models like the one that has proven over and over again to have success at YCAP, started by Joe Smith and carried on by his son, Andy. Let's go find those kids who want to be met where they're at, who want their own giftedness lifted up. Maybe they're not on a 4-year path, and that's okay. Let's get them on a path where they see a future in their own life. But so often we shove them down this cookie cutter, one size fits all, everybody's got to go to college or bust, and it doesn't work. And so it's no wonder that along the way, in many cases, fatherless young men end up finding brotherhood on the streets. And so, it's not that our public school system is meant to be combative with gangs, but boy, it is certainly our opportunity from county general government, I think, to steer and fund our public school system towards meeting those young people where they are, knowing full well the problems that they pose, the havoc they wreak in many of our communities if they fall onto this path where there is hopelessness and you're dealing drugs, and the next thing you know, you're in a gang, and violent crime in so many of our inner city neighborhoods terrorizes our fellow citizens.
Thank you, Weston. Matt?
Doug, when I'm on the campaign trail, there's a lot of priorities and topics we discuss, but the number one is public safety and crime. We hear that so much, and gangs are a part of that, and it's typically because there's some type of trauma for those children when they grow up, that they want to feel like they're part of something. And it is local organizations. Jenny and I are proud supporters of YCAP, Teen Challenge. There's places like Michael Gordon and Troy Rogers at Pursuit of Happiness that are trying to meet those kids and deal with that trauma so they don't end up in gangs. I will say, while we're on public safety, and I did a ride along last week, what these officers do is so dangerous. And I was out with them on a Thursday night, and they put their lives on the line for us every night. So as mayor, I want to work closely along our next sheriff to make sure they have the tools they need to succeed. And there's been some talk at the city about the guns being the problem. I don't feel that way. I believe in the Second Amendment. I own a lot of guns myself. I think it's a root cause with an erosion of a family unit. And I think these officers and deputies and lieutenants do a great job for this county, and we have to make sure that they continue to have what they need to do their job, and I will stand behind them 100%.
Thank you, Matt. Sabrena?
Doug, this question's really personal and hits home for me. As a small business owner, I know what it feels like to be broken into and come in on a weekend and all of your computers have been taken away and you just feel violated. You feel very insecure. It's also very personal to me because I'm the mother of a law enforcement officer here in Hamilton County who is also a sergeant in the Army. And so this hits very close to home with me, and that's why I have been so pro-law enforcement as a commissioner and voted for funding to give our officers all the resources they need. But let me tell you something. We have a gang problem here in Hamilton County, and it's not exclusive to the city limits. And anyone that says otherwise has got their head in the sand. And let me tell you, these children are first being exposed to the gangs in elementary school, and then they are joining the gangs by middle school. We have to have intervention within our schools. We have to have safe schools. We have to have safe rec centers. That's the only way we're going to change it. And keep in mind, we're going to have a lot of turnover next year. The next Hamilton County mayor needs to support our new sheriff, work alongside our fairly new city mayor and our new chief of police. And I would support having a dedicated gang task force made up of local law enforcement officers from the city and the county, as well as local agencies, state agencies, and federal agencies. We had a gang task force at one time, and we were identifying the gangs and we were running them out of Hamilton County. And then what happened? New administration came in and it got disbanded. As the next mayor of Hamilton County, Sabrena Smedley will be tough on crime, and I will also give our law enforcement officers the resources they need to do their job.
Thank you, Sabrena. Now let's go back to the 1-minute responses. Weston, you're first.
Yeah, you know, I think we all are going to stand with the deputies who've really, in so many unfortunate circumstances, been put in an almost impossible position, particularly in the last couple years. And we all want them to be paid competitively. I think we all would like to see our sheriff's deputies lead the way in the region in terms of entry-level pay. But I think there's also a conversation here. It ties into when I describe our campaign as being about the community that we want our 4 children to grow up in. I think we've got to begin to think long-term. And we can say back the blue and we can tell the police that we're all for them, but at a certain point, we've got to, within the realistic reach of county government, be willing to invest in other opportunities for young people. We've got to get our kids off the street, give them a hope and a future. We've got to expand vocational education and refocus public education entirely around success in the rest of your life, career training. It's not just all about college. And I think in the process, we'll end up reducing crime long-term in a sustainable way.
Great. Thank you all. Question number 3, something that is top line for many, many people. And when we did this poll, I was blown away. What? Somebody said something. Did I not give somebody a chance to rebuttal? Oh, I forgot 2 of you. Go ahead then, Sabrena.
I didn't really have a rebuttal. I would just add that, you know, I'm the only one standing up here that has a proven track record of being the pro law enforcement candidate, and I'll take backseat to nobody on that. I have voted 2 years ago and actually led the fight to give our law enforcement officers a significant pay increase, in which most of them got up to a 14% pay increase. I've also been part of the process in voting for funding to support shutting down our deplorable jail and expanding Silverdale Correctional Facility. And the next mayor is going to have to see that through. I've been part of the process. Voted for all kinds of funding to give our deputies equipment, vehicles, cameras, you name it. Invested in programs that work, Fuse, invested in our mental health courts, and we're seeing progress because of that. I'm very proud of it.
Great. I'm sorry I messed up. Matt?
You know, Doug, I want to use the mayor's office, and you'll hear me say this often, as a platform to promote respect for law enforcement. I want to use the office and local media and social media to get the word out that we're going to respect the law officers and give them what they need to do their job. They often work 2 jobs. We got to make sure they have the proper funding. I want to look at their retirement. I do think what they did at Silverdale was very resourceful, but there's still a lot of work there to do. We have additional facility issues out there. We're in different facilities around town that may or may not could be improved, and I want to study that and make sure what makes sense for the entire sheriff's office. And I may not have another opportunity to say I'm also very grateful for Sheriff Jim Hammond's endorsement this weekend.
Great. Thank you all. Our third question, as I sort of interrupted you, is very important to lots of people in the county, and I was really surprised at how high it is. It has to do with the issue of abortion. 59.6% of the people who said they will vote in the primary will only vote for a candidate who is pro-life. Starting with you, Matt, what is your position?
Well, I'm 100% pro-life, Doug. I've never been ashamed of it, and as the Bible says, it's at inception. So I do not have a problem being vocal about it. So I think you and I talked on the phone early on in the campaign, and you said, Matt, some people don't answer this question. Well, I'm happy to answer the question, and it's really not going to take me 2 minutes. I'm firm in my stance on that.
Thank you, Matt. Sabrena?
Yes, Doug, thank you for the question. I'm pro-life, and again, I'm the only candidate standing up here that actually has a record to back that up. During my first time on the commission, I voted to support Amendment 1, which ushered in some of the tightest restriction laws now in the state of Tennessee, and I'm very proud of that vote. But as we think about being pro-life, there's a lot more to it, though, and I believe that we need to do more to help mothers that are single moms or mothers in general that are, about to give birth, and give them the resources they need, and counseling, provide, classes, prenatal classes, and, classes on nutrition, and give them resources and teach them to want to give their child life. Just teach mothers how important it is to provide life for their child. And in addition to that, there are adoption agencies, and just making those connections and helping young mothers if they'll have the baby, even if they're not at a point in their life where they can raise it, but just to let them know there are thousands of people out there that would love to adopt a child. And there's just so much more we can do besides just saying we're pro-life.
Thank you. Weston?
A lot of times Sabrena is right in saying that she's the only one who's actually got the politician's track record on an issue. I actually have a track record of being pro-life. I got 4 little babies at home right now who are probably watching hopefully they're watching and getting ready for bed. I can tell you I've changed about as many diapers as any dad in town in the last 7 years. And I'm totally pro-life. And I think one of the great legacies in this community are the strong positions that so many of our community leaders, and Doug, you're one of them. I remember it makes an indelible mark. I had a high school teacher who was arrested in some of the protests that prevented one of the abortion clinics coming here decades ago. And I do think this is biblical. Life begins at conception, not inception. But it is a principle that we all, I think, hold very dear, and it's a great part of the legacy of our community.
Wonderful. Do any of you all have an additional comment you'd like to make?
I would just like to add that there are a lot of great local organizations that help support this. As Sabrena mentioned, I recently did the pro-life march down at the Walnut Street Bridge, and I met so many great organizations that are helping these young ladies and letting them know that we respect all life, including the unborn. There was one young gentleman with Students for Life, and even these high school kids were out there, and I really respect that and think we should promote that and bring awareness to all those groups that are in town.
Wonderful. Sabrena?
While we're giving a shout out, let's give a shout out to Choices because they do an amazing job, just to be very specific on a local agency. Thank you.
Thank you. Weston?
Yeah, I'm a Choices donor, fan of Choices, big fan of Carol Ann and all the work that they do. And like I said, I mean, I think an important part of when I talk about preserving the values of this community, which have been known around the world. I mean, people know Chattanooga is a place with a unique track record on this issue. And it's, I think, one of those issues where you better look to the county mayor if you think about political leadership moving forward in this community to protect the value that is so deeply held here that we believe life begins at conception.
Thank you. Thank you all for your transparency. Our next question is an interesting one. It's one I feel very strongly about, but that's not, but as you hear the responses, you'll get a dose of what I'm talking about. Has to do with the literacy rates in our inner city urban schools. Let me tell you some statistics. Only 36.5% are satisfied with public schools. Only 48.5% approve of the job of the school board. But literacy rates in 6 of our urban schools, mostly minority, are below 10%. That means 90% of the children graduating from 3rd grade cannot read. And so it's a big deal. However, at the same time, 78.1% agree this needs more effort and resources, the literacy thing. However, 48.5% oppose increased school funding. So what do you say, Sabrena? What do you say? More county funding, or is there another answer to this intractable problem?
I would like to give another answer because I think you have to look at the whole picture. First of all, if you paid attention where I did my announcement, it was at the Mary Garber Institute, which will be the next location of our vocational trade school, which will open in August. I think you've heard all of us talk a lot about vocational trade schools, which is great. It's great to provide those opportunities for our students, but if our students can't read, what does it matter? So when I think about education, I go back to the very beginning, even before literacy rates you're talking about, Doug, but pre-K. Only 30% of the students entering kindergarten are prepared. That's unacceptable. We've got to do better here in Hamilton County. Then what happens? They go through the system. We find out by 3rd grade when we measure literacy, only 36% of our 3rd graders are reading on grade level. So you can provide all the post-secondary opportunities you want, but if a child can't read, they can't do anything. We've got to do a better job here in Hamilton County, and as the next mayor, that's where my focus will be. I will partner with the city mayor, our superintendent, to make sure that we move the dial on early childhood development and literacy. If we can increase that from 30% to 50%, it will transform this community. There's no doubt about it. How do we do that? Well, literacy. We put our brightest and best teachers in the schools where the greatest challenges are and the lowest test scores are, and we incentivize our brightest and best to be there. Only when we get serious about this are we as a community going to see a difference. And if I'm the next Hamilton County mayor, I promise you that this will be one of the greatest things I do as Hamilton County mayor. It's where my focus will be, early childhood development and literacy. And then all those opportunities will be great because our students will be able to read.
Thank you, Sabrena. Weston?
Well, it's important to understand, first of all, that this county runs 25 different pre-K locations, but they're all state and federally funded, and it's extremely expensive. So one of the promises I'm going to make to you tonight is that I will not always tell you what you want to hear. Early childhood education is incredibly important. I'm fortunate to be able to provide it for my children. And we provide it in this community through state and federal funds to a lot of our lowest income students. But if we're going to talk about expanding it countywide, that's going to require a tax increase, much like the one that as a city taxpayer I'm paying right now. I think it's also important for us to clarify when we talk about 36% literacy rate, what we're really talking about is 36.8 or so % of our students are reading on grade level. And a lot of times the politicians can really sound dumb to the teachers who are engaged every day. I guarantee you, every last first and second grade teacher in this community is going to wake up tomorrow morning and go to work and do their very best to teach little kids like mine how to read on grade level. But we throw these terms around, but it's not a literacy rate like you can or can't read. It's whether you're reading at grade level. And the reality actually of technical education, I'll take you down to a technical school, and it is unbelievable the kind of livelihoods that we launch young people who were failed by the K-12 system into. They may not have been reading at a college level, and I would say should we pour more investment into early childhood reading? If we have the resources, it'd be an interesting place for the money to go for sure. But we ought to remember that the whole model is broken. It's a one-size-fits-all, every kid's the same, send them all to college approach. That's what reading on grade level is all about. And I'm not saying we ought not focus on it, but the reality is every kid ought not be going to college. And every kid who finishes at 18 years old in our public school system ought not be frowned upon if they're not reading at a senior level. We, in many cases, should have prepared them to go into welding or to go into nursing. And on most of these paths, you don't actually have to be reading on this arcane college standard of grade level that our teachers do their best day in, day out to teach to.
Thank you, Weston. Matt?
Yeah, I've met with Justin Robertson and even our past superintendent, Brian Johnson, and had a lot of discussion about this. And of course, we're all for trade schools, but I've lived it, and I've went and toured these schools, and I was just up at Sequoia, and they've got 9 different skill sets you can learn, from construction science, machine shop, auto body, cosmetology, cyber security, and those kids are so engaged that they want to learn. I had been previously getting phone calls about discipline issues or bullying in schools, and I asked the principal there what issues she had, and she said, we don't really have those here. We've had 2 fights in the last year, and they got broken up by older children because these kids are engaged in a trade. And there again, I'll use the mayor's office as a platform to promote it and use the media and social media to let the students and the parents know that that's an option. I've always been a fan of performance-based pay. In my business, I paid my sales guys a commission. The more you sell, the more you make. I used to pay $100 to put a window in. You put in 6, $600. You put in 8, it's $800. So who's doing the best job, and how can we pay them the most money to educate the children? I'm going to respectfully disagree with Sabrena on pre-K. There have been several studies recently. I just read one this morning from Vanderbilt University. One, this will cost a lot of money to do that. We need to focus on K through 12, plus you would have to change the state constitution. We're already overcrowded in so many areas, and these churches and other pre-K places that are teaching these kids, they teach them creative thinking, they play games, and there's so many studies that show that later in their K through 12, they end up in a better situation. Plus, all those places provide jobs, and they pay taxes. So that's my stance on pre-K.
All right. Sabrena, do you have a response?
I sure do. Thank you so much. Wouldn't take doing a tax increase for what I'm talking about at all. We already have people in positions doing this, early childhood development. The problem is not everyone has access to it. It's income-based. And we need to find ways where everyone can have access to it. Because if more students don't come to school kindergarten ready, our literacy rates are not going to improve, or something else. And while we're on this topic, let's talk about being in the classrooms. For 8 years, I've been in the classrooms. I've seen what our teachers are dealing with. Our teachers have shared with me they are not teaching curriculum. They are teaching to an agenda, and they're not provided the autonomy they need to teach. And when it comes to literacy, there's just a one-way fits all. And in order to really be effective in teaching literacy, teachers need the autonomy they need to teach, not just focus on reading, but focus on writing and being able to read to the students, having the students read with them, and then the students read to them.
Thank you, Sabrena. Matt? Weston?
Given the timing of the race, I had the opportunity to run for a few weeks alone for county mayor. And it was interesting because this is the first race in 30 years. And I began talking about an area that I've been passionate about my whole life. I'm the first person in my mom's family to go get a 4-year college degree. And so I went that path with some skepticism about whether it was for everybody. And it's one of the reasons that I ended up on the Board of Regents, getting to serve all of our technical colleges. And, it's encouraging to hear that this is also a priority of the two other candidates. But we cannot overstate the importance of treating our students with dignity at every stage of their education. And I do think when you hyper-focus here on these first few years, we forget the tens of thousands of students who are in our system who may end up being violent criminals if they don't have a hope in a future. And so much of, I think, the proper role of a county mayor, because it dovetails into economic development and our workforce, would be to open up more vocational schools, transition some of our schools into that model. I mean, this is a county of 380,000 people, and we run one vocational school. Find me a baby boomer in this community who doesn't want to open back up Kirkman. I can't use the same building, but we could certainly build or convert a school, and I think we ought to call it Kirkman.
Great. Matt?
I think there's been this stigma for years around having to get a four-year degree, and it's not for every student. And I just want them to know what's available and that they can get high-paying jobs. You know, I sat down with Miller Industries recently. They have 800 employees. Less than half of them live in Hamilton County. We have to develop a workforce that we can keep in this county. When it comes to the teachers, I think often they're sometimes overlooked. For example, I recently was given an example. A father's child went to Westview, and so they got the teacher gifts for Christmas. Out of 30 children, she got 28 gifts. That doesn't happen in some of our inner city schools. So we need to let the teachers know that we appreciate them too and support them to help give our children better education.
Thank you, Matt. Next question. Economic development and jobs. It's the second most important issue. 64% think Hamilton County is encouraging jobs in small business. How will you sustain and improve on that challenge?
Well, this is
Starting with Weston.
This is work I've been involved in for a lot of my career. I've had the opportunity to sit on the side of the table of investors, of companies trying to grow here. It's been a challenge really in most of my lifetime as Chattanooga has become a magnet for economic activity that has served the entire county well. One of the real oddities is that we bring business leaders, business owners to Chattanooga, and we sell them on our community. But if you look at the performance of public education in proximity to downtown Chattanooga, and you can go quite a ways out, other than magnet schools, it is really a failing picture. And so often we end up losing major job recruitment opportunities to areas in the region with better public school systems. People come to Chattanooga and they'll say, what an incredible city. But it comes back to a combination of our workforce, which is a direct reflection of our entire public school system, and then very specifically, the quality of public education in proximity to Chattanooga, the city of Chattanooga. You get into the outlying parts of the county, and you've got wonderful public schools. Let's talk about Sale Creek High School, Soddy Daisy High School, East Hamilton. These are some of the best high schools in the state of Tennessee. You come back into Chattanooga, and imagine yourself coming here, taking a job, you see a wonderful city, you think about where your kids are going to go to school, and you realize that most people who work in downtown or close to downtown and want to live in proximity to our beautiful city, often that has meant for a generation that you send your kids to private school. A proposal we're going to roll out this week that's been deep in my heart for a decade, going back to my early days in business here. The city and the county ought to partner. And we ought to build a big, beautiful, world-class middle school and high school in downtown Chattanooga. And it ought to be open to students across the county, open enrollment like our entire school system will be in the fall of 2022. But this thing would be a beacon. Every single economic development tour that the chamber and the county and city mayor took potential employers on would stop by this middle school and this high school. If you move to Chattanooga, you move to Hamilton County, this world-class high school downtown is an option for your family.
Great. Economic development. Matt?
Yeah, economic development's in my top 5 priorities. I think it's something I could really benefit the county with. As a former salesman and marketing, we can go out and find new industry. We've got McDonald Farm now up in Sale Creek and over. I want to have a comprehensive plan for what we do at McDonald Farm so we can go out and sell it to bring that industry here. But most important, above that is to help the already great businesses we have here. We've got some great employers here. If you look at your McKee Bakeries or your Miller Industries or even Volkswagen, they do have an issue with workforce, which goes back to the trade school and providing workforce from inside our county. A lot of the workforce, and that'll lead into workforce housing because folks are coming from Bradley County and Catoosa County, and we need them in this county to help with our tax base. And the assets we have here, we have beautiful mountains and the river and Chattanooga, you know, and Hamilton County, and the fastest internet. We can attract a lot of business, but I first and foremost want to make sure that we take care of all the great businesses that are already in Hamilton County.
Thanks, Matt. Sabrena?
Yes, thank you, Doug. I've got to take a minute to really brag on some great things that we've done during the 8 years I've been on the commission working alongside Mayor Jim Coppinger. We have located 39 new businesses to Hamilton County. We've expanded over 71 local businesses that are already here, creating over 11,000 jobs for our citizens. We've maintained a AAA bond rating. We're only one of 2 counties that has that. Our tax rate is the lowest it's been in 70 years. We've done such a great job. The McDonald farm purchase, you know, that being a future industrial site. We've done so many great things together, providing opportunities for Hamilton County citizens. However, where we are missing the mark is workforce development. And it's not just about apprenticeships are already in place, because there are some that could be expanded. But there's so many opportunities in connecting our students with future-ready institutes, and also sitting down with employers like McKee and U.S. Express. I have to brag on U.S. Express a minute. One thing COVID's taught them is that things are going more automated and that they can work from home. So they're repurposing one of their buildings. They're partnering with Chattanooga State to provide a future-ready institute, which will bring students from Tyner, East Hamilton, Ottawa for IT training. And let me tell you something, we're missing the mark on IT training. We don't have enough students going into computer science. We've actually lost a couple of businesses because of that. So what I want to do as the next mayor is really create a workforce development task force made up of key business leaders here in Hamilton County, so we can share ideas, talk about the challenges we face, and come up with ideas together on how we're going to address those. We can attract businesses here every day, but if we don't have an educated workforce, then we're going to miss the mark.
All right. Weston, any responses?
Yeah, I appreciate Sabrena bringing up a subject that we'd not yet announced, but the Future Ready Institute that she's talking about that will be in conjunction with U.S. Express is my project. I led that project, and it's been a labor of love. We've not formally announced it. We may as well announce what we're planning there. Several months ago, I gathered at Chattanooga State all the CEOs of the local logistics companies, U.S. Express, Steam Logistics, Kinco, all in one room. And I said, we at Chattanooga State, on behalf of the Board of Regents, have a desire to train the workforce that you'll need to grow your companies right here. This is long before I was a candidate for county mayor. I appealed to the state government in a partnership with Dr. Ashford at Chattanooga State. We got over $12 million of state funding to build out both an expansion of our truck driver training school and then what's going to be a really unique partnership where curriculum is going to be written in a partnership with our great private sector companies. And we're going to tie in, as Sabrena said, a Future Ready Institute. I think this is what vocational education in the 21st century looks like. And it's been a passion of mine long before I became a candidate for county mayor.
Responses, Matt?
Yeah, educating our workforce is, of course, super important to keep them here working for Hamilton County employers. I've always been a big fan of peer groups. I've been in several peer groups, and I don't always try to or want to be original. So I would look to others that were successful in an area I may be struggling in, and they would teach me how to make that better. And I want to go talk to other counties and other cities and look at how they've done their economic development. We're doing a lot of great things here, but if there's an opportunity to make it better, for example, Huntsville, Alabama, I want to go meet with them, see what they've done, find any new ideas, and reciprocate. So I'd love to be peers with several mayors from around the country to learn how we can do things better.
Sabrena?
Yes, I'll just say real quickly, for the record, when I sat down with Eric Fuller, he didn't mention Weston Wamp. He just said that he and Chattanooga State were doing that.
Well, we can follow up with Eric Fuller, who I asked to attend the first meeting.
All
I
right.
just got a text from him.
Les, we've got only 9 minutes left in the program. We've got to get to closing statements, so I want to change things up just a little bit. We're not going to have responses. This is a question that everybody wants to know. It has to do with taxes. So if you would, just take 1 minute and answer the question about what is your philosophy on increasing revenues to the county? What is your philosophy on increasing revenue to the county? And we'll start with Matt. 1 minute.
You know, Doug, revenue comes from property tax or sales tax, and we have our lowest, a lot of people don't understand millage rate, but property tax that we've had in years because we've continued to grow to keep taxes down, and we can increase the revenue if we continue to develop, but we have to develop in a proper and smart way. And a lot of people say, what's proper development or what's smart development? And it means different things to different people, but I want to work with all our local regional planning agency, the Home Builders Association, communities. I've studied new urban development for years. There's proper ways to do it to continue to grow, to bring in additional revenue to the county so we can use that revenue to not have a tax increase. And I want to use my business background and experience to look at that big budget and figure out how we can keep the same budget but get more done with it.
Sabrena?
Yeah, Doug, that tax rate we were just discussing being the lowest in 70 years, I, along with 8 other commissioners, voted to lower that to make it the lowest. Very proud of that. But let me just tell you something. We have an opportunity right now to do something that we really need to do critically. We have some funding coming into Hamilton County, one-time money coming through the federal government. We're going to be getting $43 million from TDEC, which $9.1 million of that can be used for wastewater. And then we've got the COVID relief money, the ARP funding, $70 million total. We've already received half of that. We'll be getting the other half. We have to invest in our wastewater. If we want to talk about growing and we want to talk about responsible growth and talk about in the future, then we have to deal with our current capacity issue now. That money has to be invested in our wastewater. All across Hamilton County, we have moratoriums in place right now.
All right.
Saudi Daisy, Signal Mountain. We have to invest in wastewater. If we don't, over the next 5 years, the rates will double, and it is the result of 50 years of neglect. And I will not continue to kick the can down the road as the next mayor of Hamilton County.
All right, Weston, I'm going to ask you to be short so we can get everybody 2 minutes closed. Can you do that on taxes?
I can try. Now, the long-term planning that comes with wastewater and the tough decisions that have to be made, you know, those who are in elected office have, by definition, in this community, kicked the can down the road. And it's one of the reasons that the millage rate has been able to remain as low as it has. All the proposals that we've put forward, we feel very confident could be funded through existing revenues, and we're grateful that our community continues to grow. And you know, I don't think anybody can ever predict the future. But the realities are there are tough decisions that have to be made in the future. And it's very easy to fund things in good times. There are probably bad times that lie ahead. That's one of the things you learn when you work in fiscal policy, as I do. And it's certainly, I think, all of our intention that the county is growing at a rapid enough rate that all of our plans would be able to be put into action on existing revenue.
Thank you, Weston. Let's go to closing remarks. If you would, we've only got so much time. We're not try to take in 90 seconds. Try to cut it down 90 seconds if you can. Closing remarks, starting with Sabrena.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you again for hosting this debate. It's been really good to be able to share ideas and vision with people tuning in this evening. But this election year is so important. There are 66 offices, I believe, on the ballot. And when you think about that, Hamilton County will undergo unprecedented turnover after this election. We're going to have a new county mayor. We're going to have a new sheriff. We have a city mayor who's still fairly new. We have a new superintendent. We're guaranteed to get 5 new Hamilton County commissioners, 3 new school board members. Who knows how many new judges? I don't believe Hamilton County's ever had that kind of turnover at one time. I'm the only candidate running that has 8 years of government experience to go in there day one and do the job and bring stability to Hamilton County government at a time it's going to need it. I've loved serving, and to be able to do that at the executive level and just to do so many great things for Hamilton County citizens and to continue to provide opportunities is something that I'm looking forward to, and I would be very humbled to have everyone's support on May the 3rd in the Republican primary.
Thank you, Sabrena. Weston?
If you watch the campaign closely, you'll notice on any given day, whether you follow us on Facebook or see us out working around the community, you'll notice there's something different about our campaign. There aren't any hired consultants. This is really from mine and my wife Shelby's heart about our community and the community that we want our 4 children to grow up in. And so we just come at it with a different level of joy and intentionality and energy every day. I'll make you these 3 guarantees if you'll give me the opportunity to serve as county mayor. 1, I won't always tell you what you want to hear. I grew up around politics. I've watched politicians do that. It's disingenuous. I'll shoot you straight. And sometimes we can respectfully agree to disagree. Second, I'll bring, and I think frankly, a lot of the new faces that are coming into county government are good. I hope that I'm one of those new faces. If the federal government can change presidents in the middle of a war, I reckon that Hamilton County will be all right with some new faces next year. And I'm gonna bring a commitment that's both one that's very personal to our family, but that I think should apply countywide. Shelby and I are willing to make this commitment to our county for 8 years. And frankly, I'm going to go further and advocate that we put term limits in place for all non-judicial positions across county government. Knox County, Davidson County, and Shelby County have already prevented career politicians. We ought to do the same. And lastly, I'll get to work on day 1 addressing what I think is our biggest challenge as a community, and it's that 60% of our graduates aren't ready to go to work or college. And if we move the needle there, it'll affect everything from economic development to crime. I'd be honored to have your support in this race.
Matt, bring it home.
Thanks again for having us, Doug. I want to use my business background to help run this county. Claude Ramsey used to say government should run at the speed of business, and I think we can get things done quicker. And one way I want to do that, and what's been passionate when I had my business, was vision, mission, and values. And I want to communicate that to all the employees of Hamilton County, and I want their buy-in and create a culture where they want to, my vision is real simple. Hamilton County has the assets to be the best county in the country. And if we communicate those values to our employees in Hamilton County, they can help get us there. Customer service. When I had my business, you deliver good customer service. Well, you as the taxpayer are the customer to this county. And I want all departments and all offices in the county to deliver good customer service to you as the taxpayer. In closing, my sun sets and rises in Hamilton County. It always has, and it always will. I'm a Christian, I'm a conservative, and I'm a Republican, in that order. And at the end of the day, if you want someone with the skill set to build teams, to lead people, to get things done, I would greatly appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates, and thank you, viewers. We hope this has been a useful and educational debate. The debate will be posted as soon as possible on our website and News Talk Radio's website and Chattanoogan.com's website. Remember, your vote counts. Early voting starts April 13th and the election is May 3rd. Thanks to Matt, Sabrena, and Weston. Good night and God bless. And thank you for watching.